At a luxurious hotel. Anna, a receptionist, had no idea that the man she had just been rude to and dismissed was Elon Musk, the owner of the entire establishment. She thought he was just an ordinary passerby. But the truth was about to shake her to the core. Anna's thoughtless actions had led her into a situation she would never forget. Before continuing with the story, don't forget to let us know where you're watching from. And if you enjoyed these surprising stories, be sure to subscribe to the channel today. Tomorrow at 2:30 p.m., we'll bring you a special story just for you. The main lobby of the Golden Ridge Hotel in Santa Monica was alive with activity on Friday evening. The soft, dim lights on the ceiling, along with the hum of chatter and hurried footsteps, blended together to create an atmosphere that was both busy and exhilarating. Every corner of the hotel held the hustle of guests checking in and staff moving luggage. The luxurious space was so well maintained that you could feel the meticulous attention to every detail, from the cream leather chairs to the plush carpets, all glowing under the warm yellow lighting. Anna, the receptionist, stood behind the front desk, her eyes reflecting the exhaustion of a long day of work. She had spent over 12 hours addressing countless requests from impatient customers, urgent calls from frustrated guests, and impossible demands from the hotel. The wrinkles in her uniform weren't just a sign of fatigue but a reflection of an unrelenting day. In the midst of the hustle, the lobby doors suddenly swung open once again. A man entered, his demeanor calm, but not particularly remarkable. He wore a faded hoodie, worn jeans, and sneakers that seemed to have seen better days. He carried no luggage, just a small cross-body bag slung over his shoulder. Everything around her continued as usual, but Anna couldn't help but notice him. There was something in the way he moved that unsettled her. It wasn't the rush or panic that others exhibited, but a strange stillness, as though he were intimately familiar with the space. Despite his unkempt appearance, there was an air of confidence about him, and that was what made Anna uneasy. As he approached the desk, there was no rush in his step. He stopped in front of her, his eyes meeting hers without hesitation, offering no sign of awkwardness. "Hello?" he said, his voice soft yet firm. "I need a room for the night." Anna looked up slightly, trying to force a smile, though it wasn't a genuine one. "Sorry, we're fully booked," she replied, not bothering to check. As the current situation was clear to her, she quickly typed a few keys on the keyboard, as if searching for something she knew wasn't there. "We really don't have any rooms left." The man didn't rush to respond. He simply stood there, silent, a knowing look passing through his eyes. "Is that so? No rooms at all?" His tone remained unchanged, still calm but with a hint of curiosity. There was no trace of panic or disappointment in his voice. Anna was surprised by his calm demeanor. "Yes," she said softly. "We've been fully booked since early today. But if you don't mind, there's another hotel nearby. I'm sure they'll have rooms available." Anna's voice sounded like a gentle breeze, but there was still a hint of determination in it. She glanced at the man, thinking she saw a faint smile flicker across his face. But it vanished almost immediately, leaving only an unchanging, cold gaze as if nothing could disturb him. He leaned in toward the desk, his eyes fixed on hers, his voice low and steady. "Are you sure there are no other rooms? No alternatives?" The question passed without any emotion, just curiosity. Anna felt a surge of frustration. She had already answered clearly. Why wasn't he understanding? "I've told you. We're fully booked," she replied, unable to hide the annoyance in her voice. "Actually, there's another hotel not far from here. I think they'll be able to accommodate you." She quickly glanced over his casual attire, continuing as if subtly suggesting that this place wasn't for people like him. The man stood up straight, something unreadable in his eyes. Anna thought he would argue or continue to debate, but instead, He just nodded slightly and stepped back. "Thank you for your time," he said gently, with no sense of urgency, then turned and walked away. However, he didn't leave the hotel. Instead, he walked into the seating area, chose a chair in the corner of the lobby, and sat silently, his eyes still fixed on her. Anna glanced at him several times, not understanding why the strange feeling still lingered. What was he doing there? Why was he sitting like that? She tried to shake off the unsettling feeling, but it gnawed at her. She didn't have time to worry about strange guests who refused to leave, but she couldn't help but wonder if something was off. As the surrounding space grew quieter and fewer guests remained, Anna felt relieved, as her shift was nearly over. A glass of wine and a night of rest were all she desired at that moment. But just as she was about to relax, the man suddenly appeared before the front desk again. This time, his appearance startled Anna, but she quickly composed herself, trying to maintain her calm despite her exhaustion from the long day. "Sorry to bother you again," he said, but his voice didn't carry any pleading or annoyance. "I've noticed a few new guests checking in. Could you be sure there are no rooms available?" Anna felt her frustration bubbling up when she saw Mr. Thompson still maintaining his calm, unshaken demeanor. "As I've told you before," she said, trying to control her anger, "the guests have made reservations in advance. That's why they were able to check in. I don't know how else to explain it." Mr. Thompson gently nodded, his eyes showing no sign of confusion or surprise. "I understand," he replied, but then unexpectedly continued. "So, what if I want to book a room for tomorrow night? Is there availability?" Anna felt as if she had been hit with a shock. "Tomorrow?" She repeated the question while gripping the mouse, continuously moving her hand to check the system. "You need a room for tomorrow?" "Yes," he replied, his calm voice unchanged. "Just a question. I'm curious to know if there might be a room available for tomorrow night?" Anna sighed, her fingers tapping lightly on the keyboard, then looking at the screen. "Yes. We still have rooms available for tomorrow," she said, her voice lowering. "But that doesn't solve your situation right now." Mr. Thompson's gaze flicked over her, the smile on his face not forced. "I'm not concerned with that," he replied. "But thank you for letting me know." A wave of discomfort rose in Anna. She couldn't understand why, but there was something in Mr. Thompson's attitude that made her feel like she was being dismissed. "I don't have time for this," she said, unable to hold back anymore, her voice sharp. "If you're not booking a room and can't pay, maybe you should step outside and find somewhere else." Her words abruptly cut through the space, making the atmosphere grow heavy. Mr. Thompson showed no reaction, only sighed and turned to walk away, his face still maintaining its calm demeanor. However, his eyes, though still cold, seemed to be watching her every move. "All right," he said briefly, not adding a word more. He turned back to sit in the corner of the room, where the dim light of the main lobby seemed to make everything appear hazy. Anna felt a little strange, but immediately pushed the feeling out of her mind. He wasn't her problem. She was just doing her job, and that was that. Time continued to pass, but despite her efforts not to think about Mr. Thompson, his gaze never stopped following her from the corner of the room. He didn't speak, didn't move, just sat there like a silent ghost. Occasionally, his eyes would turn toward the front desk, as though silently noting every detail, every action. Anna couldn't ignore it any longer. He wasn't behaving like the other guests, sitting waiting for a ride or using a phone. Mr. Thompson simply observed, without saying a word. As time passed, Anna caught him watching a young bellboy who was struggling to push a trolley full of luggage. He stood up, his steps strong, moved closer, and adjusted the trolley, skillfully showing the bellboy how to balance it better. His gesture surprised the bellboy, who thanked him with a warm smile. Anna stood observing the scene, wondering to herself, who does he think he is? Playing the part of the nice guy? But anyway, this act didn't change the fact that her time was being wasted. He wasn't a customer to be dealt with, and Anna didn't have much patience left. The late-night atmosphere seemed quiet, but in that silence, Anna felt a strange difference. The man sat in the lounge area, like a refined ghost, carefully observing everything around him. He didn't miss any small detail, from the way the front desk staff handled a couple with a difficult attitude, to the clumsy gestures of a housekeeping staff member just finishing cleaning. But what particularly caught Anna's attention was his gaze. He showed no emotion, just looked on with an impassive expression, as though he was silently recording everything into a wordless diary. At midnight, the man stood up, his briefcase slung over his shoulder. Anna couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Perhaps now he would leave, and she could return to her work without feeling watched. But before he left, he spoke softly, his voice warm but full of meaning. "Thank you for your hospitality." Anna simply smiled, nodded without looking up, and responded quickly, "Have a peaceful night." However, before stepping out the door, he paused. The entire room seemed to go still. He turned back, his eyes scanning the space around him, from the shiny stone floors to the dazzling chandelier on the ceiling, as if inspecting every detail of the hotel. And then his gaze stopped again, once more, on Anna. He smiled, not an ordinary smile, but one as if he understood everything that had gone unsaid. Then, he left. The next morning, when the staff of the Golden Ridge Hotel gathered in the large meeting room, Anna felt an underlying tension. This was not a typical meeting where policies or work directives were simply announced. Today, there was an unusual atmosphere, as if everyone was waiting for something important to happen. Exhausted from a long night, Anna sat quietly at the back of the room, her eyes glued to her phone screen, trying to ignore the commotion around her. The door to the room suddenly opened, and Mr. Thompson, the CEO, entered with obvious confidence. However, what startled Anna was the man following him. It was him, the one from last night whom she had treated indifferently. And now he stood there, no longer in his simple clothes but in a sleek black suit, entirely different from the image she had of him the night before. Mr. Thompson began, his voice full of enthusiasm but still professional. "Good morning, everyone. Today we have a very special guest." Anna felt the entire room seem to deflate. What would he do? Would she have to face criticism for her behavior the night before? And then, Mr. Thompson continued with a bright smile. "I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Elon Musk, who will be the new owner of the Golden Ridge Hotel." The atmosphere in the room suddenly went silent, as if everyone stopped breathing. Anna felt a chill run down her spine as she realized that the person she had passed by last night was the one standing there. He stood still, his expression unchanged, but his eyes sparkled as if he had known everything all along. Anna stood frozen, a lump in her throat making it almost impossible to breathe. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Elon Musk, the man she had treated coldly and with no respect the night before, was the owner of the Golden Ridge Hotel. Every image of their encounter last night played like a nightmare, repeating in her head. Elon stepped forward, his arms crossed over his chest, his face calm but his eyes deep, as if every movement he made was purposeful. "I have always believed that every organization has a true heart, and that heart is the people who make it." His voice was warm but firm, gliding lightly over each staff member in the room. "Last night, I had the opportunity to observe all of you, from the bellboys carrying luggage to the team at the front desk. You all worked incredibly hard, with dedication." He paused and looked towards Anna. She felt her face heat up, too embarrassed to lift her gaze to him, although Elon did not specifically point her out. She could clearly feel that his eyes were seeking understanding from her. "I witnessed many commendable things in the way you work. But there is one thing that made me think. That is the importance of the small details, friendly gestures, sincere greetings. Sometimes, it's these little things that have the power to change a guest's entire day." The room fell silent. Only the soft breaths of the staff could be heard. The tension in the air was so thick that no one dared to breathe heavily. Anna felt as though she were being pulled into a whirlwind, unable to escape. Although Elon did not directly criticize, each word he spoke carried with it a sense of sternness and an undeniable message. Elon continued, his voice still steady, but with a subtle shift that made each word sharper. "We work in an environment where guests always have very high expectations, and how we treat them will determine whether or not they return. Sometimes, small actions like a smile or patience can make an unexpected difference." He scanned the room, paused for a moment, and then continued, "But I want to emphasize that this is not the time to blame anyone. This is the time for us to reflect and improve. Each person here contributes to the success of Golden Ridge, and I am not here to disappoint you, but to work with you to build a place that guests will remember forever." Anna felt like a weight had settled on her shoulders. She thought about what she had done the night before, the coldness and indifference she had shown to Elon. She couldn't shake the guilty feelings gnawing at her heart. Elon looked at the faces in the room, not rushing, but carefully considering each word he spoke. "From today onward, I will work closely with the management team to ensure that you have the tools and support you need. That's an essential part of our success together. We will never stop learning, improving, and setting the highest standards that every guest deserves." A light round of applause echoed in the room, but Anna couldn't escape the tension that still surrounded her. She looked down at her hands, trying not to meet anyone's gaze. All she could do was remain silent and deeply realize that she had missed a valuable opportunity to demonstrate professionalism and respect for Elon. The meeting ended. The staff stood up, and for a moment, the atmosphere seemed to lighten. But for Anna, nothing could erase the feeling of shame that enveloped her. She felt surrounded by the silence of her own thoughts, each step she took feeling heavy, as though she were facing the painful reality that she had created herself. Anna sat still, her tired eyes staring out the window. Although the surroundings were quiet, inside her, it felt like there was a storm. The things she had said and done that she was dissatisfied with kept swirling in her mind, relentlessly. When she stood up, preparing to leave the meeting room, a strange sensation made her stop. A solid figure stepped into her line of sight. "Hello? Anna." His voice rang out gently, but it was deep enough for her to clearly feel his presence. She lifted her head, her heart pounding, the anxiety tightening in her chest. "Hello, sir." Anna tried to speak, but each word caught in her throat, as if she couldn't find a breath to say them. Elon stood in front of her, his gaze not judgmental, but full of concern. After a moment of silence, he spoke gently, but each word he said carried great weight. "Yesterday was probably a challenge for you," he began, his voice not too harsh, but the seriousness clear in each sentence. "But remember, caring for customers is not just a job. It reflects who you are. When we are tired, it's easy to forget that. But remember, every person who walks in here is observing us, and they will feel what we bring." Anna couldn't answer immediately. His words felt like arrows aimed directly at her heart. She nodded, but inside, she couldn't stop thinking. "You're right," she whispered. "I truly apologize for being careless." Elon didn't rush to respond, but simply smiled lightly, not to reassure her, but as if to say that she didn't need to blame herself too much. "Don't feel guilty. We all have our moments of failure," he said, his voice gentle but full of understanding. "The important thing is to recognize it and change. That's the only way we can grow." With that, he gave a slight nod and turned to walk away, leaving Anna standing there with her swirling thoughts. She felt as if a large stone was pressing down on her chest. But there was also a new light appearing in her mind. She told herself that if there was anything that could change, it was herself. Not just her work, but the way she faced the world around her. The way she communicated with others, even in the most tiring moments. The weeks that followed saw Anna begin to change the way she worked. Every customer she met received a genuine smile. No matter how tired she was, she listened more carefully, no longer rushing to make decisions, but taking the time to understand and empathize. And the positive feedback, even small, from customers and colleagues made her realize that these changes really mattered. Gradually, the story of the mysterious boss became a legend at Golden Ridge. No one knew when Elon would appear again, but that possibility made everyone more attentive to their actions. For Anna, the encounter was no longer one of tension, but a vivid lesson in growth, respect, and change. Her work was no longer just a means to earn a living. It became a place where she could truly contribute, do something meaningful in the lives of others. And though every day might be difficult, she knew that with each task she performed, no matter how small, she was creating positive changes. Anna's story and the lessons she learned were truly simple, but full of power. Never underestimate the power of kindness and respect. You never know how your actions or words might affect others. And sometimes, big change starts with small actions. And in the end, Anna became an outstanding role model at Golden Ridge, where the story of her kindness and growth spread as an inspiration to those around her. She realized that, sometimes, it is the change in her attitude and actions that can change an entire community. Note, this story is entirely fictional, created for entertainment and to convey meaningful messages. All characters, events, and situations in the story are products of imagination. We take no responsibility for any resemblance to real events, characters, or situations. Any message in the story is for reference only and is not intended to apply to real life.